Update 41, Melee Magic Nightblade. This build has not changed that much, but I'm going to go over it because, siphoning attacks was changed. That's a big part of the class. Might as well, For Melee Magic Nightblade, I will actually make I'm 50-50 on it. Vampire. 50-50 on Vampire. I think there are some definite benefits to it for playing melee as opposed to playing ranged. In ranged, you're less squishy because you are using Swallow Soul, you have more healing, and Swallow Soul is more expensive, and Vampire increases the cost of your abilities. So if you want to run Vampire, this would probably be the build for it, as opposed to the range build that I also have posted on my channel. So keep that in mind. But I don't run Vampire because I don't want to deal with the extra cost, because I already run a really tight ship when it comes to sustain. I don't need to fuck around with it anymore. So, going over everything here, it's kind of the same as last time in terms of the sets. We're going to talk about the skills a little bit differently, though. I've actually found that between playing ranged Magic Nightblade and melee Magic Nightblade, of course, I already knew that melee Magic Nightblade does more damage. What I did not consider is how much more damage it did. When I'm playing open world in Cyrodiil, as much as I love to play ranged Magic Nightblade, it takes a little bit longer to secure kills. The fights get a little bit more drawn out, which leaves time for the 10 people over the hill to show up and kill me. So, to an extent, there is less effectiveness with ranged Magic Nightblade, but it also is more effective because, it keeps itself alive more. It's a balancing act. It's not perfect. So, talking about melee Magic Nightblade, a lot of people, regardless of what class they're playing, have been using Master Dual Wield. As of this patch, Master Dual Wield is not that good. Let's take a look at the number. On my damage-oriented character, so all the stats and the tooltips should be correct. Master Dual Wield, let's see, arenas, scroll down, stinging slashes. So it looks like we're going to do roughly 900 more damage per initial hit, or when the initial hit and the bleed. That is like 50% less than what it used to be. And then you have to factor in battle spirit and damage mitigation and all that. So veteran Destra staff, people are probably still going to be using that, but you'll probably see less Master Dual Wield in the future, which I am infinitely thank you for. Thank God for less procs. Some procs, a little proc here and there as a treat, it's fine. But when you have a build that is microwaving you because of the sets they're wearing rather than the abilities they're using, it can get a little frustrating. Moving on, as I said, I don't really use procs. This is a no proc build. No proc actually means that you couldn't use Mythics or Balrog or even Rallying Cry, but, those aren't damage procs. I should say it's not a damage proc build. This will work in Battlegrounds, although, it excels in single target damage, and then it has the capability of doing a bit of AoE, by virtue of just having power extraction and tether. So in a group, this build is pretty good. Actually, if I'm going to be playing in a group, I'm probably going to be using this, unless that group lacks range. I've played with a few people, like there's a range plar occasionally in one group that I just randomly join up with every now and then. So I don't have to worry about playing ranged because we have someone who can, do ranged if someone's running away. But otherwise, I will be primarily doing melee. Which is a bit sad because I like ranged Magblade, but melee just does so much more fucking damage. The typical setup, American Ring of Majesty, it's free stats, why not use it? I have this one as Swift because I just think it's cheaper. Rallying Cry Neck, an Amulet, Rallying Cry Sash. I actually am doing an additional piece of medium here because I can afford it. Concealed Weapon is a cheaper spammable, and so I can afford using medium. Medium will net you more damage in most cases, so having that additional piece of medium is nice. Of course, as with the other Magicka Nightblade build, I have 2 pieces of heavy, and then, one of my shoulders is medium. Balrog is the same. Order's Wrath, axes. I will go over it again so that you don't have to go watch the last video. When is Order's Wrath better than something like War Maiden? Because if for you, War Maiden may be a better damage set than Order's Wrath. I'm currently using Order's Wrath, and I did the math, I did the testing. Order's Wrath will net you more damage than War Maiden if the following conditions are true. If you are using double axes, as well as have the Fighting Finesse CP, you will be doing more damage with Order's Wrath than War Maiden. That is the benchmark. Of course, if you're a Khajiit, then you're going to be doing even more damage, and so that makes Order's Wrath even more desirable. But I'm not a Khajiit. I played Dunmer because I used to roleplay when I was younger, and look at her. She's beautiful. I have an emotional attachment to her. God, I love her. She's gorgeous. So, moving on. Order's Wrath axes will net you the most damage so long as you have the Shadow, Fighting Finesse. If you're a Khajiit, then this is, of course, going to be better than War Maiden. I predict, I've not tested it because I'm not going to race change to Khajiit. I predict that even if you didn't have Fighting Finesse, as long as you had at least one axe and the Shadow, Khajiit would probably be worth it. What I would do, if I was playing a Khajiit, what I would do to eke out just a little bit more damage, I might try one sword, or maybe one dagger, instead of double axes. But honestly, even double axes, you're still going to be getting, giga crits. So it's up to you. At least have one axe if you're playing Khajiit. If you're not playing Khajiit, then, double axe it up, as well as Fighting Finesse. You could also do Exploiter or Backstabber, but I have not tested those, and I like the consistency of Fighting Finesse. A lot of people use Backstabber in PvE. I actually randomly did get pulled into a Trials group, and it's fun, yay. Most people say use Backstabber. I haven't been using Backstabber because occasionally I attack from the front. So yeah, if you're parsing, of course Backstabber is going to be better for you. And I definitely think that if you can maintain being behind your enemy in PvP, Backstabber will net you better results. But it's only a 2% increase, so I prefer the consistency of just using Fighting Finesse. I did bump up my health a little just because shit's getting wild out there. I'm using a little bit less max mag, but it's still a pretty good amount. It'll net me some extra damage. My health is at 32.5 thousand, as opposed to the previous 31,000 or roughly 30,000 that I was running with before. The recovery is about the same as when I play ranged Magic Nightblade because I'm using mostly the same sets. Both Rallying Cry and Marking Ring of Majesty, these are what's going to give me damage and sustained stats. So mostly the same, but because siphoning attacks got buffed, my sustain is actually a little bit better this patch. Also, Concealed Weapon is a much cheaper spammable, and it also does, more damage, so that's nice. Now, what did change about Melee Nightblade? Well, I used to be playing Melee as, let me see, I used to be playing it like this, especially during Mid-Year Mayhem, because there are a lot of cloakers. I went through so many detect potions, because there are just a lot of bad Nightblades out there who snipe spam, and as much as I would just love to leave those players alone because they're obviously new to PvP, snipe spam is a threat I cannot ignore, so I kind of have to kill you. My apologies. This is what I was running. You will get a little bit more damage because you'll get Minor Berserk when you do critical damage from enemy's flank, and we're a Nightblade, we're going to do critical damage from enemy's flank. In addition to that, we get the Slayer bonus, so we got 3% extra weapon and spell damage, which is nice, but the change to siphoning attacks means that I can't not use it. It's so good. It's so good. And also I can run around in stealth, and if my mag is low, I can sacrifice some of my health to refill my mag and not pop out a cloak. It is unfortunately going to mean there are going to be more perma-cloakers out there, but it is generally a good change, and I really missed it. You can hear me gush about it more on the Ranged Nightblade video. But overall, let's kind of go over everything. We have In-Cap Strike, same. Power Extraction, the same. This will give you your Minor Courage, as well as Major Brutality and Sorcery. This will also put a debuff on your opponent, and that can help with your passive damage mitigation. And because Melee Magic Nightblade is a little bit squishier, having that damage mitigation is important. Another way you could play this, if you are bad at using Shade, you could do it like this. But Shade does do passive damage, gives you passive mitigation, and it gives you the ability to do really cool tricks and juke people out. Oh yeah, I'm fighting over here. Well, guess what, bitch? Follow me, yeah. So they follow you, and then you can just leave. I have won, or at least survived, so many fights because I've been able to use Shade. Cloak is not your main defensive. Cloak is a stamina sustainability as well as utility. It also augments your offensive capabilities because it guarantees a crit on your next strike. I generally do not use Cloak as a quote-unquote defensive as much as I do use it for stam sustain. Technically, it is a defensive because dodge is a defensive, and I'm using Cloak as Magicka dodge, but I could also just dodge. So Cloak is more of a stam sustainability. If you're using Cloak purely as your defense and your run away, you're gonna struggle. Shade is the best way to get away. You shade away and Cloak away. And it makes it infinitely harder to find you because you're out of range of detect pots most of the time. So even if someone is using detect pots, they're gonna have a hard time chasing you down. Of course, melee magic Nightblade is the one class which I think you could get away without using Shadow Image because of the minor expedition that now affects both bars. Praise be. If I'm running a scroll across the map, I don't have to keep bar swapping, because now I have minor expedition affecting both bars. It's a nice quality of life change because I was really tired of like swapping back to my front bar all the fucking time. But other than that, it should not change the dynamic that much. Of course, it no longer does major brutality, so major berserk, I think it is. So Sea Serpent's Coil, if I remember correctly, is no longer really it is a viable option now, as opposed to in the past that it was not as much of a viable option. But I still use Mark and Ring of Majesty because it adds a defensive component to it as well. Just the extra armor you get is just thank you. It's nice. It's like 3% extra damage mitigation. I'm not going to pass that up if I have the chance. Other than that, I think that covers everything. The playstyle is mostly the same. I will say that I actually have considered not using Swift. I could also do Infused. I could get more sustain by doing that as well. My sustain is kind of good. I'm going to say it like that because it's usually enough to get me by, but there are occasions where I do feel like I'm struggling. So the siphoning attack change will help with that. I've done a few fights, and it has helped with that. But you could not use Swift and just use Infused. And because you have Minor Expedition on both bars now, increasing your Roof and Seed by 15%, you're probably going to be fine. Truthfully, I think speed is a little too high right now in the game. It can actually be hard to hit things just because we're both moving so fast. If there's another person here and we're both ADS strafing, you know, we're gonna have a hard time hitting each other because we're both moving so fast. It's kind of a funny problem, but it's not something to ignore. And so it means that I really have to get on someone's ass, but they're gonna try to get on my ass, and then there's, you know, a little bit of server desync. It's a bit of a mess. So I might actually stop using Swift on my melee build, but on the ranged build, I still think it is pretty desirable. As for CP, that's the wrong button. Going over CP, we have, oh, where's my cursor? Master at Arms, Duelist Rebuff. Those are my two kind of defensive-oriented CPs, and then I have Ironclad and Fighting Finesse for damage. That combines well with the Shadow. As for red CP, I have Relentless because it's just nice. Sometimes there are a lot of animations playing at once and the game does not tell you you're stunned, so having that 10% damage mitigation while you're trying to figure your life out because you are stunned but the game is not displaying you're stunned, it's kind of nice. Rejuvenation, I might switch this out because it is kind of weak, but it's nice, so I'm keeping it for now. Fortified, just a little bit of extra damage mitigation through armor. Pain's Refuge, this is a percentage damage mitigation and therefore is more powerful than Fortified because this cannot be penetrated by using something like Elisus. And given people use Elisus, that is, you know, shock, fire, ice, and then the penetration debuff. So that's four debuffs. 4 times 2, 8. So the second someone hits you with Elisus, you're getting 8% damage mitigation. And everyone is using Elisus right now. Of course, if they add any more debuffs to you, if they're a Dragon Knight and they apply Warmth to you through one of their dots or whatever, then you're going to be getting even more damage mitigation. So Pain's Refuge, 100% necessary in this meta. As for green CP, just kind of do whatever you want. For running Cyrodiil, I definitely think Gifted Rider is the way to go. And Steed's Blessing is also kind of nice if you're out of combat. Although, let's be honest, the out of combat, or the in combat bug is really, really annoying. So, you know, maybe this is honestly useless, but there's not that many good green CP anyways, so what am I gonna do? Another thing, just as a side note, you could actually replace the Ice Staff with a Flame Staff. I've considered doing it because every now and then I hold block for like a half a second too long, and the rest of my magic bar just gets eaten up. Like, I'm fighting 2 people, so I think, okay, this is enough. I can block for a second, get a little bit of the heat off me, but then 5 more people join the fight, and my magic bar is just fucking gone. So I have considered going back to Inferno Staff. I think I have a Rallying Cry Inferno Staff somewhere, but oh yeah, look, there we go. It's sharpened. I'd have to change that. So you could try that, but if you are going to do that, the main appeal of doing that is so that you can apply the dot through Trifocus. That additional pressure is going to help you out a lot. So nothing to scoff at, something to consider. I've tried it in a duel and I was okay with it. The sustain you get from the shield breaking, though, is kind of nice. So Ice Staff is still probably king, but you could also use Flame Staff. I would not use Lightning Staff on your back bar. I don't care if you think the heavy attacks are nice. It's not a good idea. Also, something that a lot of people know, but also a lot of people don't know, you can use Elisus as sort of a ranged spammable. You can light attack weave with it to get more damage out of it. It is free, it's undodgeable, and since they did buff the status effects, it's going to do a little bit more damage than it used to be. In Infinite Archive, I know people use this as a spammable because of the focused efforts thing. Same thing applies, it's free, it's undodgeable, and damage is minor, but you know, if someone's at a sliver of health and they're spamming dodge roll, sometimes Elisas can finish them off. It's a little funny, but it works. I think that's covered everything. If you have any questions, comments, anything else, let me know. I'm also happy to recommend additional back bar sets. For the longest time, I would recommend Griffin's Ferocity because of the minor force and minor expedition, but now that this gives you minor expedition, all you're getting out of that is minor force. So as for back bar sets, I'm gonna have to reconsider. You know, I can't give you a recommendation at this time. Rallying Cry is still the best. Transmutation works well. It is a set that I carry if I'm working in a group that already has a bunch of Rallying Cry, and let's be honest, I group up with solo players. Almost everyone has a Rallying Cry, so I will switch to Transmutation. Unfortunately, the only way for me to spread Transmutation to them is Refreshing Path, but it's better than nothing. I think that covers everything. Questions, comments, concerns, leave them in the comments. I'll get back to you. Feel free to reach out to me either in-game or on Discord or even on Twitter. You know, mail me. I will happily help you with any questions you have, or even, you know, trying to figure things out in-game if you're trying to get into PvP. I think that covers everything. Good luck out there, and try not to spam siphoning attacks too much. I have a bad habit of hitting it, because it used to be an activate thing, and now I'm going to be killing myself with it. So, you know, that's fun. Ciao, and enjoy Update 41.